Who, in your words, is considered Muslim or Arabic?
In general, anybody from the Middle East region, North Africa, generalizing, anyone from North Africa over to roughly Pakistan, Afghanistan area. I think generally when you're talking about those terms in the news, that's the region you would be talking about people from those areas.
Who do you think discriminates against Muslims and Arabics the most?
Before or after 9/11?
That was one of the big deals. One of her questions and stuff was about, it's not on here, but about 9/11. If you think 9/11 was a big deal with it. So
I'd say since 9/11, America in general has had a huge problem with that. I think specifically right after 9/11, I have a lot of friends who are Muslim, and I know that wasn't a good time for them just because of the overall weight of the way it felt to be, the way they were looked at and so forth, just by association. It's like guilt by association, which is just that's the way the world tends to work in regards to lots of different races. So anytime a major event happens and it tends to involve one specific ethnic group, unfortunately, everybody that can be identified as part of that ethnic group kind of gets blamed for it.
What do you think caused the discriminators to discriminate against Arabs and Muslims?
Well, again, if we're talking about specifically 9/11, that issue alone did it. I can't really speak for before then because I don't remember it being that big an issue. I'm sure it was a big issue in the 60s and so forth with, you could look back to Muhammad Ali changing from Cassius Clay to be Muhammad Ali and the issues around that, and Malcolm X and his murder actually, and his faith within the Muslim or Islam. But it became more of an issue in the mainstream, I think, with 9/11. I think that's when probably people in general across the board.
As shown in statistics, we did find in 2001, the hate crimes against Arabs and Muslims rose up to about 600, and after that they stayed at a rate of around 200 hate crimes per year, and before that it was only like 20 to 30. So it increased by a lot. And what do you think can stop discrimination of the Arabs and Muslims?
Just the same with any kind of racism. It's education, exposure to different races. The more people know about the different cultures, the more understanding I think there is. If people knew that it's not necessarily a religion or an actual, I think, background that causes violence and terrorism. It's more or less a political movement more than a religious one. If people saw that, then they might be less likely to just group everybody together like that.
So you basically think that America is where this mainly occurs?
Yeah. As of right now, I would say that there's probably a higher percentage of. You brought up the hate crime issue. I'm sure that there's probably more hate crimes in regards to Muslims, Arabs in the United States than probably anywhere in the world. And again, I think you can trace the roots directly to 9/11. I'm sure that there's a pretty high number also in places like England. Again, also because of terrorism and so forth, and again, racism and such. So the difference between cultures.
So basically you're saying that the biggest start was during 9/11, and that's when it started increasing rapidly. And
yeah, I'm sure that there was some level of it before then, but I think it became palpable to people like me who might have not noticed it as much before after 9/11, because that made it, I know just from hearing people talking on television in private conversations, after 9/11, traveling, for instance, on airplanes, people were more likely to be a little bit scared if they saw somebody of certain races boarding the same plane as them. And obviously that, in a way, is a form of racism, whether they want it to be or not.
So why do you think that the media shows us them being dirty, gun-toting terrorists that basically for us to stay away from, when most of them are.
I don't think it should. I don't necessarily think the media tries to portray Muslims or Arabs as gun-toting terrorists. I think that unfortunately news events in the world, which is generally what the media covers, hovers around acts of terrorism. Therefore, and that's what people tune into. And since media is completely ratings-driven, what people watch, people unfortunately are driven to watch more controversy, war, terrorist attacks will get people watching television. So I think just the focus of news programs in particular will kind of focus on those things more than anything. So because of that, maybe, that's how people might see countries like Afghanistan or Iraq, people walking the streets with machine guns and so forth. Because in part, in the recent past, it's been that way, but there's been wars going on there also. So, whenever there's a war going on in a country, there are more people walking around with weapons. So that's part of it, and that's where the media focus has been. So I think that's the main reason. I don't know that they're going out of their way to make them seem dirty, per se. I think everybody's guilty of being stereotyped in some way, shape, or form. You can go to a different country and ask somebody who's never ever met an American what their impression is of America, and they might give you the whole cowboy thing, because I've heard that before, having been around the world. So, I didn't grow up in the Wild West, so that wasn't my culture, but that's what they think we are. So.
And what makes this a major problem today? This being the last question.
The relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims. Again, terrorism, the threat of terrorism, the fact that here in the United States specifically, and that's all I can speak for because I'm American, but the fact that we are still officially fighting a war on terrorism, and since that tends to focus on countries in the Middle East, people in the Middle East tend to be Arab and predominantly Muslim, that's always going to be the key issue. The issue between the United States and the Muslim world. And then, I haven't even brought into subject the whole issue of Israel and the relationship with Israel and the conflict between Israel and the Middle East and the Muslim world. And that all by itself is a whole huge topic. So.
And I would like to say thank you for answering our questions. Is there anything you would like to add as a final say?
No.